Om Shanti. How are you all? People believe that this world came out of nowhere, out of some strange explosion, as mentioned in Big Bang Theory. And after billions of years, some piece from the sun gets cooled and becomes the earth. And there was water everywhere, and it took billions of years for the right elements in the ocean to come together and form a single cell or single celled living organism. So from that, it slowly evolves into many animals and finally humans. So this is what science says, but it doesn't uh, propose this theory on its own or due to its intelligence, but it is purely from the knowledge of Bible and Hindu Vedas. Because in Hindu Vedas it is mentioned that we evolved from single-celled organism to human finally. And in Bible it is mentioned God creates earth, then he creates ocean, then he separates sky and ocean, so on. So just by combining these two religious scriptures, science have come up with a new theory. But one thing we all miss out is, as much as scientific discoveries are made by humans, even religious scriptures are made by humans. So it's impossible to find the truth from the knowledge of human. Since they have proposed a theory of the creation of this world, also there's a need for them to create a theory for the end of the world. So they think somehow the world will get destroyed in the end due to impact of some external forces, asteroids and so on. And they believe it's been several billions of years since the world was created. And based on Hindu religious scriptures, they have mentioned somewhat similarly. So they say about this time cycle called kalpa, and they give billions of years for this time cycle, and it was separated into 4 yugas. And it is mentioned in the scriptures that each yuga consists of some billions of years. So according to Hindu religious scriptures, they believe that the world will end only after billions of years from now. So before coming to the creation of the universe, let's see the destruction of the world, because that's something we need to address, because that problem is right in front of us, because scientists have been predicting that the world will end anytime soon, maybe within 20 to 50 years, based on the global warming and many other factors. They strongly believe that this world wouldn't last for the next 100 years. And is it true? It is partly true, because the world will be like forever. It will be there. Only the living organisms inhabiting on the earth will be wiped out. that too not completely. Some people will definitely be living in this planet no matter what happens. Destruction will definitely happen, but for the destruction to happen, two things must occur. So people think that we are facing natural calamities like huge waves, tsunami waves, and volcanic eruption, and several other things, heavy rainfall, tornadoes, like that, due to pollution of the air. That might be true, but that constitutes only a few percentage of the whole truth, because the basis of all the natural calamities we see is purely based on the amount of sins that we have been committing on daily basis. We know for sure that we've been committing more sins compared to the previous generation. So is the amount of and the intensity of natural calamities. So it is directly proportional to each other, but nobody give it a thought. The world must be filled with uncontrollable amount of sins for the world to get destroyed. So nobody has any doubt about it, because the sin will reach that peak level pretty soon. But that's not the end. Though it's an end, it's also the beginning. Beginning of what? The new world. So this is clearly mentioned in Bible. When the world is filled with sins, God calls Noah to prepare a wooden structure, somewhat like a boat, and he asked to bring two or a couple from every species, so that the God will make it rain continuously for several days, and the world outside the boat gets completely washed out. So only the living organisms that is inside the boat is alive in the world. So after the water gets drained out, everybody comes out of the boat and the new world begins. So that's how God destroys the world, but he makes sure somebody is still alive to enjoy the new world. Even in Hindu scriptures, when the world is about to get destroyed, Parvati Devi and deities perform intense devotion or tapasya in remembrance of one god Shiva to save this world from destruction. After all, that's the only job of God. So it clearly says when God needs to work, of course, during the destruction of the world. So, though it is mentioned in Vedas that God saves the world, but it is not clearly mentioned how exactly he saves the world. So, the truth will be given only by God, only when he comes to this earth. So obviously he will come in the end. And all religious scriptures point to that. The second arrival of Jesus Christ, arrival of Kalki Avatar, because they don't know who God is, so whatever they believe uh, as God, so they are expecting his return to this earth. But in reality, you can't call anybody God if he has taken a birth out of a mother's womb. We know Sri Krishna took birth, Jesus Christ took birth. So God doesn't take birth like us. That's the only reason why nobody has seen God. So how will he come if he's not taking birth? And where was he till then? God is not visible to us because he is so tiny, just like the soul. Yes, we are actually the souls, not this perishable body. It is the soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows, and that's why we have this habit of wearing religious symbols in between the eyebrows by Hindus. It is the soul that actually sees through the eyes, listens through the ears, speaks through the mouth. When the soul leaves the body, the eyes no longer see, ears no longer hear, mouth no longer speaks. So it is the soul that does all these things through this body. After leaving this body, it's going to take another body from a mother's womb. So that is what we call as rebirth. And we souls, before taking birth in the earth, resided along with God in this golden red colored light world called the soul world or Parandam or Parlok. And God is also a soul just like us. That is why he is called the Supreme Soul, Param Atma. The only difference between God and all other souls is we souls, when we first take birth in earth, the world would be heaven. For the first 2500 years, it would be heaven. Then the world becomes hell, where we started experiencing sufferings in the form of diseases, betrayal, natural calamities, and in so many ways we start experiencing punishments. For what? For the sins we commit in hell. We don't commit any sin while we are in heaven, because we would be as pure as a child. As a matter of fact, we would be more pure than child. How's that possible? Because while we were in heaven, we wouldn't be body conscious as we are now. Instead, we would consider ourselves to be the soul that shines like a tiny star in between the eyebrows. It just comes naturally for them. So they always consider them to be souls and consider others to be souls. So they don't get attached to the external appearance. So they don't fall for lust. So they don't get anger. They don't fall for attachment, ego, and jealousy. Lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego are the five vices which is responsible for all the sins we perform in hell. But in heaven, we don't know what those sins are because we are that pure. As a result, we were surrounded by enormous amount of wealth. Everybody there in heaven, they're very rich. And also, they will be ever healthy, ever wealthy, ever blissful, ever peaceful. Because nothing in heaven will disturb your peace. Because there's no reason for causing sorrow there. So there is heaven. We would all be happy. We would be happy with other animals as well. Lion and cow drink water from the same pond together. So you can find it for yourself how loving they would be towards each other. Unlike here in hell, we are not peaceful. We don't love even our fellow humans. So needless to say about our love with other animals. We even become so stupid that we feed on other animals. And obviously, anytime sooner we are going to feed on our fellow humans because people are so addicted to the taste of flesh. Now, the animals that they feed on is limited. But as time goes by, due to several reasons like COVID-19, they would find themselves having no money, no food, but still their addiction to the taste of flesh will make them feed on human babies. That's going to happen anytime soon, and it's already happening in some places due to some other reasons. While we are in heaven, we would always be blissful. Our happiness doesn't depend on the external environment. Instead, it stems from inside because the very nature of the soul itself is blissfulness. But in hell, because we lose soul consciousness and become body conscious, that we no longer can tap into the happiness within. So we try to get happiness from the external environment through our physical senses. That's how we become addicted to sensual pleasures and these five vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. We have committed huge amount of sins to the extent that we can no longer bear the pain and sufferings as a consequence of those sins. So that is exactly when God comes from His supreme abode. He enters an old man's body directly to give this knowledge through the old man's mouth, and He names him Brahma, and the knowledge He gives through His mouth is called Murli, which is available free of cost in all Raj Yoga meditation centers. And also it's available in YouTube and in many websites. I will give the links to some of them in the description below. Please make use of it because that's the only knowledge that's going to save the world from the destruction. So it doesn't mean nothing is going to happen to this world. Well, everything will happen from natural calamities to the Third World War. Everything will definitely happen. But what is being saved is the soul. Since the soul is totally corrupt with these five vices, it is eligible only to live in hell. But God reveals this secret that after the destruction of this hell, the same world is going to become heaven, filled with everything that's needed to make us ever happy. But in order for us to enter into heaven, we need to become eligible following the directions of God. After all, God has come just to give this knowledge, to give the directions of how to purify ourselves so that we are eligible to enter heaven. While we were in heaven in the beginning, we were so pure because of soul consciousness. So God asks us to become soul conscious again. How do you do that? Because we no longer have the power to be soul conscious. Maybe we can understand considering ourselves to be the soul is soul consciousness, but how to retain that soul consciousness throughout the day? God says, yes, it is true, you have lost the power to be in the soul conscious state forever. In order to fill your soul with the power necessary to be in soul conscious state forever, all you need to do is to consider yourselves to be the soul and then remember God as a point of light. The world he resides, it's a golden red colored light world. So we need to imagine God as a golden star that shines in a golden red colored sky, because that's how he is there. By remembering him constantly, our soul gets rid of these vices gradually, depending on the amount of effort you put in remembering God, which means our soul is becoming pure and pure. If you are very sincere in not wasting even a single second in worldly attractions, and instead by focusing on all your concentration in remembrance of God, then there's a pretty good chance that you become 100% pure, as pure as God himself, so that you not only enter heaven, but you claim the highest status of heaven, which is Sri Narayan, because it's a kingdom. It's ruled by king and queen. The greatest king and the first king of heaven is Sri Narayan. The chance to become Narayan is open to all. It just purely depends on the effort we make with utter sincerefulness. So it is by teaching this divine secret that God saves this world. So by remembering God as much as possible, we are becoming pure, which means we are becoming eligible to enter another time cycle. So depending on the amount of effort you put and make yourself pure, that determines whether you enter heaven in the beginning or in the middle or in the end. If you are 100% pure, obviously you will enter in the beginning of the heaven and enjoy the heaven fully. But if you lack sincerity and if you don't put much effort in remembering God, thereby purifying yourself, then you will end up entering heaven at a later point of time. If you don't make any effort, then obviously you will be entering hell. Until then, the souls will reside along with God in the supreme abode, Parandam. Well, God, after giving this knowledge, will take all these souls along with Him to the soul world. And those who become eligible in this birth by making effort to enter heaven, they will take birth in heaven. But God doesn't come to heaven, which is why He is called love, ocean of love. Because He is making us eligible to enter the peaceful, blissful, wealthy world which He Himself never visits. He just creates this world brand new and makes us eligible to enjoy that world. But He doesn't enjoy that world. So, coming to the first question, when will the world end? So, as I mentioned earlier, the amount of sins has to reach its peak level. Likewise, so that's going to be made possible by the majority of the world population. But very few people identify God and takes this knowledge and makes sincere effort and make themselves eligible to enter the golden aged heaven. So the world gets destroyed in order for it to be converted to heaven. If you want to establish a garden in a forest, the first thing you need to do is to destroy the forest. Likewise, in order to establish heaven on the same earth, first this world needs to get destroyed. So that's going to be made possible by the amount of sins committed by the majority of people, whereas very few people who takes the knowledge of God and becoming pure, they bring the new world. Because this world is becoming ineligible for them to live, because they have become very pure. They don't deserve to live in this old world. So that is why this world is destroyed and renewed to become a new world, heaven. So in order for the old world to get destroyed, these two things must go hand in hand. One, the amount of sins should skyrocket, and the people who are becoming pure, they should reach the peak level of purity. Only then the world will end. So it is up to you whether you are going to help in the destruction of the world or in the creation of the new world. This is how the world is created. The world is going to be there forever. But every 5,000 years once, God Himself comes to this world and gives this knowledge and helps us purify ourselves in order for us to take birth in heaven. That's how the new world is established by God. He doesn't create the world out of nowhere. The world always is going to be there. Only we souls have become so body conscious that in Bible it is mentioned that they have created Adam out of the clay, because the body is obviously made up of 5 elements, especially clay. And not only that, our awareness has come down from soul consciousness to body consciousness, which means it's equivalent to be clay conscious. So from that, God takes us washes our souls with this knowledge and makes it as pure as possible. So that's the actual meaning of the Bible, that says that God has made human from the clay and He gives life to that by His breath. Yes, it is more like we are dead. That is, our souls are dead. Actually, souls has no death at all, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. But since it no longer remembers who it actually is, it is considered dead. So God raises us from the dead. This is the actual meaning of what Bible says as God will raise the dead. He is going to rise the soul because it is in a deep sleep state. So God wakes us up. He is not going to wake up a dead body from the burial ground. After all, spirituality means everything about spirit, not the body. Science says this world is created out of nowhere and it slowly evolves over billion years to what we are now. So it believes that we are advancing intellectually. But is that the truth? Because they say in Harappa civilization, that is believed to be 5,000 years old, they were more advanced in terms of technology and all sorts of development. If that's true, how can you say the evolution theory is true? Not only that, even the Big Bang theory can easily be nullified by another scientific theory of biogenesis. Because scientists believed initially that life evolves out of non-living things. When the situation is favoring the development of life, life automatically comes out of non-living thing. That's what scientists believed in the beginning. Then Louis Pasteur, who invented vaccines, he made an experiment by keeping a bread closed with a cloth. Before that it was open, so they saw some worms and germs, so they thought if you provide everything that's necessary for a living being to survive, then it will automatically evolve. Now Louis Pasteur closed the mouth of a bottle which contains a bread. Now they don't find any bugs. Then other scientists questioned that there must be something in the atmosphere that's necessary for life to sustain. So you are blocking that. That's the reason life doesn't arise from the non-living thing. Then Louis Pasteur formed a flask with a curved neck, which is open to the outside atmosphere. But since it's curved, bent down and then rising up, whatever comes from the atmosphere, it goes to the bottom area, but it doesn't rise. So obviously the atmosphere, the oxygen, everything is going into the flask, but the germs that's found in the atmosphere, they just settle, they just don't rise. As a result, they don't find any germs or any living thing coming out of that bread. So this proves that life can never come out of a non-living thing. Only a living thing can give rise to another living thing. So it proves that, which means Big Bang theory is wrong. Yes, because for life to form, there must be a life previously. It doesn't come out of nowhere. That's what biogenesis theory is all about. But science says in Big Bang theory, something burst into some physical things that forms earth. Even if you wanted to believe that to be true, science can never give a valid theory of how life initially comes to this earth, because biogenesis theory just disproves all other theory. So all the life forms that we see exist like forever. So if that is the case, then obviously the earth also must have existed forever, right? So this is the loophole that science did not get to see till date. Unlike the evolution theory of science, actually the world in the beginning was more advanced in terms of everything, whether it's technology or culture or even in terms of behavior. We were more advanced compared to what we are now. Actually, we are in the lowest state now. So when we were in heaven, we were called deities. So Hindus do worship deities in temples even now, without even realizing that they are worshipping themselves, because deities were our initial births. So the reason we are called deities is because we were filled with divine qualities. So we would be peaceful to each other, we would always be experiencing the blissful state. But slowly we lose soul consciousness, which means we forget. By the end of first 2500 years, we completely forget ourselves. That is, we forget ourselves to be the soul. Instead, we consider ourselves to be this body, which is the root cause for all the sins. So once we become body conscious, we start getting addicted to sensual pleasures and vices. So those are called sins. Once we start committing sins, what happens is we are more prone to committing more and more sins. So that's the nature of sins. So that is the reason the world is now filled with sinful activities. And also we are being punished for the same. And in the beginning, we were filled with wealth. There would be gold and diamond everywhere. Even palaces were built out of stone bricks. Then imagine for yourself how rich we were in the past. But we didn't have windows or doors installed in the palaces, because we don't know what stealing is. Nobody is selfish in heaven. We were as pure as newborn babies. So that is why we worship them. We worship us. Now it's time for us to become worthy of worship again. with the guidance of God, because it is only by following the directions of God we become eligible to enter heaven. All the religions that we see now are created by humans in hell to lead life in hell, not in heaven. It is only the knowledge of God, Murli, that makes us eligible to live in heaven. So obviously that knowledge is, the need for that knowledge happens only in the end of the world. Because in order to enter heaven, we need the knowledge right before we enter heaven, right? In Hindu scriptures, especially in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, there's a mention about the night of Brahma and the day of Brahma. So, the first two yugas are called the day of Brahma, and the last two yugas are called the night of Brahma. The reason for that is, it is not the day of Brahma actually, it is the day of the soul of Brahma, because it is only after the entrance of after God enters Brahma or enters that world man, he names him Brahma. The soul, the Brahma soul, after entering heaven becomes Shri Krishna. So it enters the heaven in the very beginning. Of course, actually he is the first baby to be born in heaven, which means he is the first to take birth by the power of purity and not out of sex. Nobody knows what sex is in heaven. Then how do they give birth to? When the husband and wife think of having a baby, the wife gets pregnant, that's the power of thoughts of the pure soul. That's the power of purity. So, whatever is true for Brahma is also true for all other souls that takes birth in heaven along with the Brahma soul. So, since they are conscious of who they are actually, that is, since they are soul conscious, it is called the day of Brahma, and they are totally active, spiritually active. But in hell, they forget themselves. So it is during sleep we usually forget ourselves, right? Since we souls forget ourselves to be the soul, the last 2 yugas or the hell is called the night of Brahma. So the first 2500 years is the day of Brahma, and the last 2500 years is the night of Brahma. So it totals out to be just 5000 years. But as I mentioned earlier, in Hindu scriptures it is wrongly mentioned to be several billions of years. That's not true. So all we need to do to purify ourselves to be able to enter heaven is to remember God as a point of light as possible, as much as possible. Then we need to fill our mind with the knowledge points or Murli points. So only we need to keep our mind busy with just these two things to purify ourselves and to enter heaven. So nothing can be much easier, right? So why can't you give it a try and secure yourself a higher post in heaven? Om Shanti. Thanks for watching. Please share this video with your friends and family members. And if you like this video, please hit on the thumbs up button and leave your valuable comments in the comment section. And if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe and hit on the notification bell and select all, so that you will be receiving all the notifications about our upcoming videos. Thanks again.